Hi class, so from this video we're gonna start talking about chapter 10, cost of capital for a firm. Okay, cost of raising capital for a firm. We will be discussing several capital components, okay, several components of how the firm can raise capital. And we say the cost for each component is component cost. Okay, and once we take the weighted average of the cost for each capital components, we can calculate WACC, weighted average cost of capital. Okay, we use this WACC in the corporate valuation model to discount all the free cash flows for the firm. Now we're gonna focus on how we can actually calculate WACC by using the different component costs. Okay, we have mainly three component costs: cost of debt, cost of preferred equity, and cost of common equity. Because these are the three major ways for a firm to raise capital: by debt, by preferred equity, or by common equity. And for cost of common equity, there are cases where we cast the cost of common equity for retained earnings. And there are cases when we calculate cost of common equity when we're issuing a new common stock. For new common stock, we would have an additional cost, which is called flotation cost. So the key formulas will be the WACC formula, which is the weighted average of the three component costs. So we use the three weights multiplying by three cost. And the cost of new common equity for a new common stock would be the DCF model we learned, adding a flotation cost F here. Okay, we will go to detail for these formulas and concepts. So let's first look at the definition for capital components and component cost. Capital component, one of the types of capital used by firms to raise funds. Okay, so capital component are the different types of ways a firm can use to raise capital. And it's mainly three ways: debt, preferred stock, and common equity. Okay, so and for preferred stock and common equity, they both belong to the equity category. And for debts, we have short-term notes payable. We also have long-term debts. For common equity, we have retained earnings and new common stock. Okay, so this graph here shows us how the structure of the three component costs for capital and the subgroups. Increases in assets must be financed by increases in these capital components. Okay, so these are the ways of raising capital. You know the accounting equation: assets equals debt plus equity, or debt plus shareholder value. So on the left-hand side equation, any increase in the asset must be financed by something on the right-hand side of the equation. Either it's debt or stock or equity. Okay, and we say the cost for each capital component cost. And if we take the weighted average of all the component costs, we would have WACC, the weighted average cost of capital. It's a weighted average of the component costs of debt, preferred stock, and common equity. Okay, WACC is the cost of the firm incurs by keeping the money and not returning it to investors. Hence, WACC is the opportunity cost of investors. WACC equals to WDRD multiplied by 1 minus T tax rate plus WPRP plus WCRS. Okay, so we have three weights here. The W's refer to firms' capital structure weights. WD means weight of debt. WP means weight for preferred stock. WC means weight of common equity. Three weights. We use the three weights multiplied by the three R. The R's refer to the cost of each component. We have RD, cost of debt, RP, cost of preferred stock, RS, cost of common equity. Note that only debt has a tax adjustment, 1 minus tax rate. Okay, so we use three weights multiplied by three costs, but for debt, we have tax adjustment. And this RS here is cost of common equity. It's the same as the RS we learned in the CAPM model, the stock return. Okay, RS, RI, they're both cost of common equity, they're also stock return. It's also the same thing as the RS in the constant growth model of the dividend discount model version. Okay, so RS can also be equal to D1 over P0 plus G. Question: should our analysis focus on before tax or after tax capital costs? Answer: stockholders focus on after tax cash flows. Therefore, we, management, should focus on after tax capital costs. Hence, we use after tax cost of capital in WACC. Only RD, cost of debt, needs adjustment because interest is tax deductible. Practice: the cost of capital used in capital budgeting should reflect the average cost of the various sources of investor-supplied funds a firm uses to acquire assets. This is true. Okay, the cost of debt used in capital budgeting is exactly WACC, and it reflects the cost for each component. Another practice: the before-tax cost of debt, which is lower than the after-tax cost of debt, is used as the component cost of debt for purposes of developing the firm's WACC. This is false because we're using actually after-tax cost of debt when we're calculating WACC. We do have the tax adjustment for debt. Question: use actual numbers or target capital weight structure. So for the three weights, for now, we are just taking the target weights provided in this chapter as management determined. We will be using the target weights, not the actual numbers. Example: overview of Coleman Technologies Incorporation. So here we're going to be provided some financial ratios for this firm, and we're going to calculate WACC for this firm based on the ratios. And of course, we're going to calculate the three component costs first, and then take the weighted average as the WACC. Okay, so first we know the tax rate as 40%, so T is 40%. We know the long-term bond issued by this firm is a 15-year, 12% coupon, semi-annual payments, non-callable bonds, selling for 1153.72. New bonds will be privately placed with no flotation cost, and the par value of this bond is 1,000. Okay, based on these information, we're going to use the knowledge learned in the bond chapter to calculate cost of debt, the bond return, or yield to maturity. Because we already know the bond price, the maturity, and we can also calculate the coupon payments based on this 12% coupon rate. But remember, any rate you're given here, no matter it's coupon rate or yield to maturity, it's gonna be an annual rate. And we know this is a semi-annual coupon payment bond. So we're gonna use this coupon rate multiplied by par divided by 2 to get semi-annual payment. And the preferred stock issued by this firm is a 10%, 100 par value quarterly dividend per Pectoral preferred stock, selling for 111.1. So we know this preferred stock price. We know that the par value is 100. We know the rate for dividend is 10%, and it's quarterly dividend. It's a perpetuity. We're going to use all these information to calculate the cost of preferred stock or the return of the preferred stock. For common stock issued by this firm, it sells at $50, and D0, the dividend just paid, is 4.19, and the growth rate is 5%. So we know it's a constant growth model. The dividends are growing at this constant rate 5% forever. We're going to use the constant growth model to calculate the cost of common stock, RS. Other information, we also know the beta for this firm is 1.2, risk-free rate is 7%, market risk premium, RPM, is 6%. So based on these information, we can use CAPM model we learned to calculate RS, stock return, or cost of common stock. We also know that bond yield risk premium is 4%. Okay, this is a new concept here. Bond yield risk premium is the difference between the stock yield and the bond yield of the same firm. So we can use cost of debt plus this premium to get the cost of common equity. Okay, so we have three ways of calculating cost of common equity. We can use constant growth model or CAPM model. We can also use bond return plus the bond yields risk premium to get the stock return. Okay, we're going to use three ways to calculate stock return or cost of common equity. And for the three weights, the target capital structure, it's going to be the target capital structure here. 30%, 10%, 60% for WD, cost of debts, WD, weight for debts, WP, weight of preferred stock, WC, weight of common equity. Okay, because it's given here that for these three components, we have the book value, weights for these three, market value of these three, but we're not using any of these. We're using the third column here, the target weights. Okay, so here is all the information we know. We're going to calculate cost of debt, preferred stock, and common stock one by one, and multiply them by using the three weights. Take the tax adjustment to calculate WACC for this firm, Coleman Technologies. Okay, so before I head to the next section, you could probably pause the video now. Try to use all these information, calculate the cost of debt, preferred stock, and common equity using all these informations here, and try to use the WACC formula to calculate WACC. Okay, I'm going to show you all the solutions or the calculation process in the rest part of the notes, but it's great if you can try doing all of these on your own because we have learned all these methods. Okay, so if you have tried on your own, let's look at the different sections of calculating different component costs for this firm. Let's first start calculating component cost of debt, RD, the marginal cost of debt capital measured by yield to maturity on long-term debt. Again, we know from the question, this is a semi-annual bond, okay, because the annual coupon rate given is 12%, par is 1,000, so we can use 12% multiplied by 1,000, so the annual coupon payment is 120. We divide by 2, so the semi-annual coupon payment is 60. We can input this as payment. Okay, and the future value should be the par value 1,000. Present value should be the bond price you're paying today, so we input it as negative 1153.72. N should be the number of half years. We know this is a 15-year long-term bond. We multiply it by 2, so the number of half years would be 30. And we compute for I. We get 5. Okay, and this will be yield to maturity semi-annual or semi-annual cost of debt 5%. Okay, so the cost of debt, which should be the annual yield to maturity, should be this 5% multiplied by 2, which is 10%. Okay, and if we want to use this 10% annual nominal cost of debt to calculate WACC, we also need to use this before tax cost of debt, 10% multiplied by 1 minus tax rate, 1 minus 40%. So the after-tax cost of debt is 6%. This is the item we're going to use when we calculate WACC. Okay, we have to use nominal rate here, and because flotation costs are so small, so we ignore them here. Okay, I hope you could solve this question on your own before we look at the answers, because this is what we already learned, how to calculate semi-annual cost of debt, okay, and how to get the annual by multiplied by 2 from the semi-annual cost of debt. Okay, the only new thing we learned today is to do this tax adjustment to multiply 1 minus t to get the after-tax cost of debt, nominal annual after-tax cost of debt, as the component cost for WACC. The second component cost we're looking at is preferred stock, RP. It is the marginal cost of preferred stock measured by the return investors require on a firm's preferred stock. Preferred dividends are not tax deductible, so no tax adjustments necessary. Just use nominal cost of preferred stock. And our calculation would ignore possible flotation cost. The cost of preferred stock can be solved by using perpetuity formula, which is PV equals payment over R. So here, the price for perpetuity, PP, or price for this preferred stock, would be equal to DP, dividend for preferred stock, divided by RP, cost of preferred stock, or return of the preferred stock. And from the question, we already know that our price for this preferred stock is 111.1. And for DP, dividend of this preferred stock is $100 par value multiplied by the 10% dividend rate. So we have 10 as dividend of this preferred stock. Okay, so the RP, cost of preferred stock, becomes DP over PP. So we use 10 over 111.1. We have 9% as the cost for preferred stock for this firm. Question: is preferred stock more or less risky to investors than debt? It should be more risky than debt. Okay, remember, companies are not required to pay preferred dividend. However, companies try to pay preferred dividend, otherwise cannot pay common dividend. Difficult to raise additional funds. Preferred stockholders may gain control of firm. So the risk level from low to high is from debt to preferred stock to common equity. Debt is of the lowest risk. Preferred stock is in between. Common equity has the highest risk. The firm has to pay debt first before it pays preferred stock and common equity. And the firm can go bankruptcy if it's not able to pay for its debts. Okay? But the firm does not have to pay preferred stock or common equity if it doesn't have money left after paying back the debts. And it doesn't have to go bankruptcy if it doesn't pay preferred stock or common equity. And for debt, the firm has to pay coupon. Preferred stock, the firm has to pay fixed dividends. And for common equity, the firm pays dividends. That's why we say debt is safer than preferred stock, and preferred stock is safer than common equity. Okay. Okay, the risk is ranked according to the paying order. Another question, why is the yield on preferred stock lower than debts? So from the last two sections, we know the preferred stock cost of the preferred stock is 9%, and the before tax cost of debt is 10%. Preferred stock will often have a lower before tax yield than the before tax yield on debts. However, after tax yield to an investor and after tax cost to the issuer are higher on preferred stock than on debts, consistent with higher risk of preferred stock. So if we compare preferred stock cost 9% to after tax cost of debt 6%, we can say that preferred stock still has a higher return or higher cost compared to after tax cost of debt. And this is consistent with the fact that preferred stock is riskier than debt. Okay, preferred stock has higher risk, so it should have higher return or cost. Okay, and if we compare the after-tax figures, the numbers are consistent with this order. Even though when we look at before-tax numbers, these are not consistent. Okay, the last part of the component cost is component cost of equity, RS. Cost of common equity is also called stock return. It is the marginal cost of common equity using retained earnings. The rate of return investors require on the firm's common equity using new equity is RE. Okay, so RS is cost of common equity using retained earnings. RE is cost of new equity, or cost of common equity by issuing a new equity. Why is there a cost for retained earnings? Answer, earnings can be reinvested or paid out as dividends. Investors could buy other securities or earn a return. If earnings are retained, there is an opportunity cost, the return that stockholders could earn on alternative investment of equal risk. Investors could buy similar stocks and earn RS. Firm could repurchase its own stock and earn RS. Okay, so this is why we say the cost of common equity is actually an opportunity cost, because instead of returning these earnings can be reinvested by the firm or paid out to the investor, so the investor could use this money to invest in other investments. Okay, so the cost of returning these earnings is an opportunity cost, and it should be the same to the return that either stockholder or the firm could use this money and earn the return they can earn by investing other things. Okay, so cost of return in earning is the opportunity cost that the investor or the firm could have made if they do not return the earnings and invest the money in other ways. Okay, so any other alternative investments of equal risk should have the same return as the cost of return earnings here. All right. There are three ways to determine the cost of common equity. Again, for this question, we can use CAPM because we know beta, market risk premium, and risk-free rate. We can also use the discounted cash flow or discounted dividend model and the constant growth model version that RS equals D1 over P0 plus G. We can also use the own bond yield plus risk premium formula. Use the cost of debt plus the risk premium, so we can have the cost of common equity. Okay, so maybe before we look at answer, once again, you can pause the video, try to use these three methods and the information we know in the earlier part of the notes to solve for RS. Okay, please do this. Give yourself enough time. And we will discuss the solutions in the next video.